So COVID has struck. A lot of you are actually going to be sitting your exams the first time in the actual HSC. You had no practice. So this is going to be a series made by me. My name is Anki. I'm going to try and help you feel more settled in your HSC English endeavors. First things first, I'm going to give you a way to learn your techniques properly, okay? So the usual technique table looks something like this. So you have a technique and you have the definition, right? But actually, this is missing a third column, okay? The third column is effects. Because what you're actually talking about in your analysis is not the definition, it's what effect is actually bringing to the poem, to the text. So the first text type we're going to do is poetry. The first technique that we're going to go into is called enjambment. Enjambment. By the way, if I pronounce any of these wrong, it doesn't matter because you write it, not say it. Not like the IB kids. So enjambment is basically this. When a line runs onto the next line. So the sentence doesn't finish at the end of a line in a poem and it sort of keeps running. Enjambment is really all about pacing, especially in free verse poetry when you don't have any rhymes or any like length of line you have to follow. Enjambment is what gives it that sense of pacing. You have to think about where the breaks are happening, okay? Does it make it sound faster? Does it make it sound slower? Does the enjambment make the idea sound like it's going overboard? It's overflowing. Okay? Or does the enjambment actually cut things off before the idea is complete? And what does that have to add to the particular meaning? Okay, so when it comes to sound techniques, we think about the sounds that we repeat. Assonance means the repetition of a vowel sound, not letters, a vowel sound. So O, 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 or ah, this is all assonant. Consonance is when you repeat consonant sounds. No, it does not have to be in the beginning of the words. Consonance is just a repetition of a specific sound. So K and C can both actually work for the same consonant. What is the effect of sound techniques? The repetition of these sounds always creates a rhythm. If you're repeating a fast, crisp sound, the rhythm is also very sharp and tense. Now, why might you want things to be sharp and tense? I don't know. That's for you to figure out along with the theme. Just remember, you're repeating a sound, and whatever you're repeating establishes a rhythm, which in turn establishes a mood or atmosphere. Specific repetitions of certain consonants get special names. So when you repeat S sounds, it's called sibilance. When you repeat P and B sounds, it's called plosive. If you repeat F and V sounds, it's called a fricative. Okay? So why would you repeat these sounds? So for an S sound, it often mimics what you're trying to describe. A soft, small kitty, the soft and small reflects the softness. It also can sound quite insidious if you say like slithering snake, okay? So that it reminds you of the hissing sound. Plosives, PB sounds are really rough sounds. So once again, it mimics what it sounds like. So if you're trying to talk about bombs and explosives, right? Like bang goes the bomb. That's really effective. So then if you move on to fricative, the F and V sound, it sounds very free. Okay, it's all the freedom that you've ever wanted in your life, like established into this sound. That the sounds elicits these moods and atmospheres and also mimics what it looks like for XYZ number of reasons. You don't really want to analyze sound techniques by themselves. They're a bit weak. You actually need to put them together with like metaphors and similes. Another really important thing for poetry is commenting on the actual structure. So most of the poems you're going to be getting in the HSC will be free verse. Okay, free verse, which means that there is no rhyme, there is no rhythm, because that's just what contemporary poetry looks like, and you likely will be receiving contemporary poetry. How do you comment on the free verse? So free verse is all about removing the adornments of rhyme and rhythm, so it doesn't sound as like pretentious as you know, like a sonnet. It creates a sense of raw, unfiltered thought. So when you're doing a poem about raw emotion, it honestly is better to do free verse. So if you read a poem and it's in free verse, like, you have to think, is it because it's a raw emotion? Is it because it wants to represent freedom? So freedom from poetic structures is metaphorically equivalent to freedom from social structures. And those are like the really important poetic techniques that I think a lot of people want to talk about and they know the names for, but you guys just don't know how to talk about it. Okay, I'm gonna move on to a short story or novel or prose. Prose is the most accurate way of saying it, actually. The first thing that you guys probably should comment on more, that you probably don't comment on a lot, is narrative person. I know you guys all know first person, second person, and third person, limited third, omniscient third. No one really seems to talk about them accurately or inaccurately. So here's the deal. First person language is the main character is the narrator. Yeah. So it's very involved. It's very raw. It's very in their head. Okay. Like, you discover their thoughts, you discover their motivations a lot more accurately. People usually use first person language when they want to do sort of investigations of certain like complex human emotions. If you read like Kazuo Ishiguro's Artist in a Floating World, okay, it is written in first person, and that's really perfect because composers can then do what we call an unreliable narrator, which means you can't really believe what the person is saying, which is also really good because it goes into the human psyche again. It's like, are we just lying to ourselves? It depends on the purpose of the text, but just remember, first person is always raw, it's always emotional, it's always a personal experience. Second person writing is when you refer, like, the narrator refers to the reader as you. So the reader becomes almost like the participant in the story, right? You don't see a lot of second person writing in narratives. You do see more in non-fiction prose, right? So when you refer to the other person as you, there are a couple of effects. First of all is you completely freeze them in their tracks. You. Okay. If you're doing a speech and you're being accusatory, so accusations are really well done in second person. You. Who did it? You. Or to invite empathy, right? So imagine you have no food today. Imagine that. I can't. I just keep looking in the fridge. Things just start getting more and more delicious during lockdown. Anyways, so that's second person. Third person is split into many different types. You have limited third person. Okay. So limited third person is when you are speaking about everyone in like they, them, right? They're all third people. You are sort of, you appear to be removed from the situation. But limited means that you only see the world through one person's point of view. So if you think about Jane Austen and her Pride and Prejudice, you are seeing Elizabeth Bennet as a they, but you only see the world from her perspective. You only see how she lives as the upper middle class young lady she is. And that's what's so well done because, with Jane Austen's free indirect speech, like, she's really able to, like, show you the biases that exist between the classes. And that's why they use limited third person, because you yourself gets trapped in one person's point of view, even though they're removed from you. Okay. Omniscient third person is the stuff they use to tell fables, right? Once upon a time, there was a little boy who walked up the road. So you are completely removed from the situation. You are purely there as a bystander, but it's really good because you get to do things called like authorial intrusions. Authorial intrusions. It's going to be like right here across my face. Okay. Authorial intrusions. And the reason why that's really good is because you, as a sort of almost godlike perspective, right? A godlike narrator, you are just commenting on these people and their actions, so you can inject your own moral lessons in there. That's why fables tend to be omniscient third, because you have like the wise old person voice being like, alas, but Little Red Riding Hood was too naive and too foolish, that sort of thing. Next one is like just pronoun usage. So what I mean by pronoun usage is are they using a collective pronoun? Right? Are they using like contrasting pronouns? Like do they use words like us versus them? Okay? Because that creates a sense of disconnection. If they're using collective pronouns like we, and it sort of creates a connection and it makes us feel like we're part of the same project. So these pronouns, commenting on them becomes very important. Something people don't really talk about is non-linear storytelling, or people don't really know how to talk about non-linear storytelling. A linear story is chronologically linear, and classically it means going through the 3 phases of orientation, complication, resolution. That's right, throwback to year 4. So you start having a preamble and then like, oh no, someone stole my wallet, and the resolution is like, it was my dog. Okay, that's a linear story. So obviously people over time have invented non-linear ways of telling a story. It's not chronologically cohesive. So parts of this would be like the flashback, the flash forward, okay? So it adds richness to this. You're taken on like a different journey. So the way to comment on like flashbacking is flashbacks add depth to characters. It helps characterize, it helps contextualize, it helps putting people into like the space. It's like, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. Villains love flashbacking. It's like, when I was 5 years old, someone broke my car, and that's why I became Carmen. Carmen. That's a cool name. Anyway, yeah, so flashbacks are really good for adding character depth. Flash forwards, on the other hand, often sort of creates a sense of closure. Okay, that's what happened at the end of Harry Potter, right? You see the kids sort of going onto the Hogwarts Express, and you're like, all these years of my childhood was not wasted. Just remember, non-linear storytelling is worth commenting on, especially when someone uses flashbacks. Okay, it's really important. You think about, what is it enriching? What is it giving me more information about? And then you sort of talk about that afterwards. Tropes and characters. What are tropes? So tropes, I think a lot of the time people misuse this word, but if you loosely interpret it as like a narrative story that's become a cliche, you probably would get away with using it. So tropes are there to reflect certain social structures, which when people use it in their own writing, they're either reinforcing it or they're kicking it away, okay? So a lot of people use like the damsel in distress trope nowadays to actually kick it away. So you have a damsel who's in distress, and then she's like, haha, I know karate. Okay, so that's like a very classic trope to subvert. It's a cool word. Subvert. Use this word if it's relevant. Don't use words that aren't relevant to your analysis. So that's a trope. Now, caricatures are just these characters that are created with one particular trait heavily enhanced to like make fun of. Okay, so for example, the arrogant politician. You get a lot of those in narratives, right? Not all politicians are arrogant, but you get a lot of those in like fiction. Also, the power-hungry tyrant. Also a very, very popular caricature. Okay, very, very popular caricature. So those are things that people use to challenge or satirize society. So keep an eye out for those. That was a lot of talking. Okay, now pictures. Visual analysis is the one that you probably think you are the best at because it's just about pictures. So the first technique that you guys have to know how to use and how to say, salience. Say it with me. Salience. Okay, salience. It is the point, it's a part of a picture that is the most obvious. It's a part of a picture that you see first. You look at a picture, you're like, it's in my, it's right there. That's the salience, okay? Now, what is the importance about the salience? People usually just say like, oh, it's a salience, move on. No, you slow down, you look at that salience and you think, okay, what abstract ideas are being conveyed? Then you don't just analyze this, like, you don't just say, oh, there's a salience. You have to actually analyze, like, what the salience is. Like, what is in the salience? You have to talk about that. Because if you don't talk about that, then, like, what did you even mention the salience for? What did you do it for? So the thing that's the biggest, the most attention grabbing should hold the abstract meaning that is the most relevant to the final message. Just remember that, okay? Like, go back, put me on half speed, and then play it again. I know I speak fast, I feel like now that I said I speak fast, people are gonna like comment, be like, oh no, you don't speak fast. I'll challenge you. I speak moderately fast. A little fast. Okay. Moving on to vector. So vector lines are things that guide your eyes across a picture. Okay. I'm gonna like sort of just put a picture here with some lines that I've drawn out that represent a vector line. Yeah. That. Okay, vector line help guide your eyes and tell you how to interpret the image. Okay, it's like, am I supposed to interpret this picture? Like, what am I supposed to focus on next? So you usually start with the salience and then your eyes follow where it goes. And whatever it hits, it's important. So analyze whatever it hits. So third most important thing is all about gaze. Okay, gaze. Okay, so either it's a direct gaze like this, okay, it's also called a demand gaze, demanding something from you. That's right, you okay, so demanding gaze, and then you also have offering gaze, like I'm offering you another point of view. So gaze is important because when I'm demanding you, that means I'm engaging you with the message that I'm saying. So if you look at a lot of propaganda posters, a lot of them stare at you like this. Okay, why? Because they want you on the army. Confronted. Okay. So you have the offering gaze as well. Basically an invisible vector line because it will direct your eyes to the next part of the actual image. Okay, so those are two gazes that you can like analyze. Make sure you do because it's always quite substantial. There's usually something to talk about. So then moving on to the terminology of mise-en-scene. So mise-en-scene is a really fancy word that basically means how a picture is put together. Which you might say, isn't that everything? And you would be correct. You would be correct. So whenever I answer like visual analysis questions, and it asked me like how someone creates a message, I was just like, the mise-en-scene creates a message. So the mise-en-scene just means everything that was chosen and selected to be within the frame. Okay, there's a significance. How come they decided to include that mossy rock in the bottom left corner of the painting? There must be some sort of symbolism contained within that rock. And you got to figure it out. So mise-en-scene is just that really nice blanket word to discuss the creative decision put into how everything was, like that. Angles. Mainly just two you need to know how to talk about. One of them is the low angle shot. Okay, start low, aim high. And that makes people look scary. Okay, like if I low angle my cup. No, you can't. I'd have to like move my camera. And I spent so long perfecting my camera angle, so I'm going to change it. Okay, look at the difference. A low angle shot would look like this. Okay, so I would look scary and intimidating. Whereas a high angle shot, I would look like this. So like the little selfie angles that we take. It makes someone look a lot more vulnerable because you're looking down on them. So that's the effect of those two. There's so much more, but it's a short session today. Okay, so next one. We're like whizzing through these. Nonfiction. How do you analyze nonfiction? This is hard because most of the time when you're getting prescribed text, it's like always fiction. What do you even talk about when you get things like newspaper articles? Okay, so whenever you're talking about nonfiction, there's always three things that you go back two, all right, which are always usually applicable. So you have pathos, logos, and ethos. Pick one and run with it. Sound confident. So logos is logic. So appeal to logic means that you are presenting cause and effect arguments, okay? It's like, because of this, therefore that. That is an appeal to logos. The second thing that I was talking about is pathos, okay? So pathos is appeal to emotions. Pathos. People don't remember pathos. They never remember pathos. But you have words like empathy and sympathy and apathy, right? Just remember pathy also means like disease, because pathology, but pathy in English usually means emotions and feelings. So appeal to pathos means you're using emotive language to make people feel things. So when you want to discuss pathos, you always want to discuss like what emotive languages have been used. That's really, really important. And then the emotions then impact how the theme is perceived. So if you're describing like dead dolphins, but you sound really cold and matter-of-factly about it, well then your message is going to be really different compared to a person who is speaking about it in like a really compassionate way and really like, oh, the innocent dolphins are tortured, that sort of thing. It establishes the tone of the piece, and depending on the tone and how it sort of mixes with the theme, you get the message, right? The final one was ethos, where people always mistakenly thinks it's an appeal to like moral ethics, right? Whereas really it's a sense of credibility. So establishing credibility. For example, if I want to appeal to ethos with you guys, I'll be like, hi guys, I graduated from James Roos and I have a medical degree and I was a doctor for like a whole 7 months. Mic drop. And I'm doing an English degree at UCID. This is why I know what I'm talking about. So it's establishing credibility, okay? So the credibility will help you be convinced of their point of view, and people often establish credibility with research, like, oh, the Harvard Institution of Flowers have found that red flowers make people happier than blue flowers, and then people are like, whoa, Harvard said that? Another thing that people don't really speak about are the anecdotes in nonfiction texts, okay? Anecdotes are very short stories, very little snippets of stories that are supposed to support a larger point. And it's in these anecdotes that you find the messages and the meanings for the actual nonfiction text, whether it's a persuasive or a speech. You have analogies, which is also a very like important evidence provision method, where you are trying to help people make sense of a concept by likening a complex idea to a more simple one, okay? So an analogy would be like, imagine if conquering the world is the same as cleaning your room, and then you make up some weird links between those two. That's an analogy. The final one that I want to talk about is multimodal text. Okay, you're sometimes going to be asked to analyze pieces with pictures and prose, right? Like a newspaper article where there's an image about it. My tip and trick for that is literally just to analyze both the image and the writing, and then you'll be fine. Okay, that's it. So those are, my big ramble list. So in case you forgot what this video was about, those are all the just very genre specific techniques that I think will really help you out for your unseen text as well as your at school analysis. It is the stuff that you probably already have heard of, you just never know how to talk about. So come back to this video and check out the effects of all of these techniques. There's always time for some shameless plugging in the end. If this video is not enough for you, if you want someone to like actually look at your essay, but you don't want to pay like all the money to go to like a private tutor, all that kind of stuff, we do have marking services available. You can check out our link in the description below. And just like it. See subscribe. Before I forget is if you want to just get a list of the techniques that I've spoken about in this particular video and you can't be bothered watching me rant on in this particular video because you don't like me or something, I will put a link in the description below and you can just download it. Just have fun with the techniques, guys. All right. In the end, the techniques are the most important tools you have, but your brain is your biggest friend.